in the 1970s, there was a television program called the NBC Sunday Night Mystery Movie, which was actually just a series of 3 different detective shows, which took turns airing from one week to the next. My favorite show featured a disheveled little cigar-smoking detective named Columbo. And the premise of his program was that every show began with some clever person committing what they thought would be the perfect, unsolvable murder. And sure enough, by the end of the show, the annoying, underestimated Columbo would figure out not only who did it, but how they did it. The mystery wasn't really who did it for the audience, it was how was he going to figure it out. In 3 different letters by the Apostle Paul, he talks about a mystery that God has hidden from everyone in both earth and heaven, which was revealed in Jesus. Welcome to Building Metal, brought to you by Baird & Wilson Sheet Metal. As readers of the New Testament, we have the advantage of knowing where the big story is going. We know that Jesus will rise from the dead. We know that the gospel will change the world, and we know that someday Jesus will return and there will be a new heaven and a new earth. But there is something else we know that we take for granted. It's a mystery that God kept hidden since the creation of humanity. The mystery is also how God was moving things in this direction all along throughout the Old Testament. When God created Eden, it was a place where heaven and earth intersected. It was God's temple where His presence rested among His creation. Rest did not mean taking a break to recover. When God rested on the 7th day in the creation story, it means He stopped the work of creation and established His dwelling place for His throne and presence on the earth. When Adam and Eve disobeyed God, they were rejecting His rule and life-giving presence and proclaiming their independence from God. That is the temptation of the serpent. He offered Adam and Eve the power to make the rules for themselves. He offered them equality with God. But by accepting the serpent's offer, they were tricked into giving up the benefit of God's kingdom and His presence on earth, which was eternal life. They lost their position as God's appointed rulers of the earth and became subject to death. By using sin to separate humanity from God, the serpent was able to secure their death and use death as a weapon to gain influence and power over the earth. But God did not give up on His children. The story that we find in the Old Testament is the story of God's long-term plan to cure the separation caused by sin and to return to dwell with humanity again. But why does sin separate us from God? Sin separates sort of in the same way that darkness is separated from light. Darkness and light cannot coexist. They are incompatible. Since God is the source of truth, goodness, and life, there is both a relational break and a moral incompatibility that results from sin. Immediately after Adam and Eve sinned, God introduced something that worked as a temporary fix to bridge the relational and moral gap. He introduced sacrifice. The life of an innocent animal was taken, and its blood was spilled. This was done as an act of acknowledgement that an injustice was committed that a holy and righteous God can't ignore, and that the just consequence of this action is death. The sacrifice was also done to demonstrate a desire to restore the relationship that is broken by sin. An animal sacrifice in the ancient world is a transfer of the life of the animal as a tragic consequence of rejecting God's truth, goodness, and life through disobedience. Sacrifices were a painful and ugly temporary bridge between God and humanity. But God was determined to dwell with His people no matter what it would take. At the same time, the serpent and other rebellious heavenly beings were determined to keep the separation between God and humanity in place. This is where the story takes off after Adam and Eve lose their access to Eden. A war is played out between the dark forces and the heavenly hosts of God over the future of humanity. The goal of the serpent and the other rebellious angels was to corrupt humanity and prevent them from being able to dwell with God's presence on the earth. So, we see an attempt on their part to mix angels and humans in Genesis chapter 6. This ultimately results in humanity being so corrupted that God sent a flood to cleanse the earth. And so he starts over with Noah and his 3 sons. A third organized rebellion occurred in Genesis chapter 11, where humans united against God by building a tower they thought would reach heaven. So God divided humanity by giving them different languages. Moses refers to this event when he writes the following: "When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided all mankind, he set up boundaries for the peoples according to the numbers of the sons of God." When the Old Testament refers to the sons of God, it's talking about angels. Moses tells us that God set physical boundaries for the nations where those within each designated geographic area were ruled by heavenly beings referred to as the sons of God. Apparently, according to Psalm 82, these heavenly rulers rebelled and chose to become the idol gods that were worshipped by the nations. So God chose to start again with a man named Abraham. He tells Abraham that it is through him that he will rescue the nations of the world. He will give Abraham a place where his descendants will live, and in that place God himself will dwell among them. It would be God's strategy to use Abraham and his descendants as a way to establish a sort of beachhead on the earth that could eventually spread and restore the broken relationship with all humanity. It's not Eden, but it's designed to represent what Eden was about. There is something that has to do with this place, this land, where God would dwell that is part of the mystery that was hidden from everyone, and that is revealed after the resurrection and ascension of Jesus. We'll begin our journey through the story of Abraham and his descendants in our next episode of Building Metal. In the meantime, here are some tools to take with you. Number 1. No one benefits from our separation from God except our enemies. Number 2. It is God who always provides a way to bridge the gap between us and Him. And number 3. God's determination to save is greater than our determination to rebel. We'll be back again soon with more tools from Building Metal. The music of Building Metal is a production of Jed Brewer and Good Loud Media, Oak Park, Illinois. Also special thanks to Christ Community Church, Oak Ridge, Tennessee.